Good evening, everyone. So, yesterday we learned about how to add components in a React application, and we discussed about data binding. We are learning about binding different types of data. So, as a React developer, we should know how to deal with different types of data. Today, we will see some more points. Yesterday, you saw how to handle numbers and how to handle Boolean. What is the difference that you know in JavaScript and here. So we discussed how to display numbers and all, but what is the new thing you need to know today is we will see other types also, but for storing the data, so what we are doing is we are using variables. In a component for storing the data, we are using variable. Here we are defining some variable and we are dealing with the variables. We are storing some data in the variable. Now, as I already told you, it is not recommended to use variables for handling data in a component. So, what is the important note you need to take here is variables are not recommended. Variables are not recommended to handle data for component. Why it is not recommended to handle data for component using variables? Why? Because what is the reason it is not recommended to handle data using variables? Because variables are immutable. Variables are immutable, and component cannot handle data with the immutable type, with immutable reference. Component cannot handle data with immutable reference. So it is important that when you are defining variables, it is important that don't regularly use variables for handling data for components because they are immutable. Why they are immutable, I will tell you what is the point actually. Already in JavaScript also you know that variables are not allowed in a class. You learned that, no? In JavaScript classes, variables are not allowed. Why? Same reason. Why variables are not allowed in a class? Because class is a template and template members must be all mutable members. Reason, one simple point I will tell you. So suppose what we need to do, we need to have some price. I declared some price and specified like this. Can I modify the price? Can I modify the price? We can modify because I declared by using var allows assignment, right? It allows assignment. So price is equal to, I can enter some new value. How you declare in such a way that you cannot modify? You can use what? Const. You learned about const. Const will not allow to assign. It will allow only what? Initialize. It will not allow to assign. So now I want price in such a way that an admin user must able to assign and general user should not able to assign. Then how you will declare? Which keyword you will use to declare a variable? Question understood? Var always allows to assign. LET always allows to assign. Const will never allow to assign. Const will allow only what? Initialization. You know JavaScript, right? So it allows only initialization. So now my question, I want a variable. So in one situation, it should allow to assign. In another situation, it should not allow to assign. Then how you declare a variable? How you will declare variable? Is it possible to change the declaration of variable later with const after declaring with var? It is not possible because you learned JavaScript will not allow shadowing. You know what is shadowing? Shadowing, hoisting. It will not allow shadowing. Shadowing with what? LET or const. So price, when you define as a variable, it will not allow to change the behavior. It will not allow to change the structure. That means variables are not allowed in a component. They are not good for a component because variables are immutable. So component should not use variables for handling the data. We can use, but the data becomes immutable. You cannot change. The structure you cannot change. But components needs the data in such a way that structure can be changed. Now the question is, then how you will handle the data in a component? How you will handle data in a component? You need a immutable memory. Variables are not mutable memory. Variables are what? Immutable memories. You need a mutable memory. So how you define a mutable memory? How you do that? So for that, you need to understand about state in a component. You need to understand state in component. So generally, you already know you are developing web applications. We are building web applications. You already know that web applications use HTTP, HTTP or HTTPS, HTTP or HTTPS as protocol. Web applications use HTTP or HTTPS as protocol. They use HTTP, HTTPS as protocols. And what is the nature of this HTTP, HTTPS? You learned in basics of web. HTTP is a stateless protocol. It is a stateless protocol. HTTP is a stateless protocol. So HTTP, HTTPS, these are stateless. They are stateless protocol. What is the meaning of stateless? When you are trying to access a page, so it will allocate memory for the page. And once you finish, you are navigating to another page, the memory allocated for previous page is deleted. That means stateless nature will not allow server to remember information between requests. The information processed for a request will stay only for that request. After that, it is gone. That is the default nature of HTTP. HTTP is stateless. Stateless meaning is nothing but, what is the nature of stateless is, so we have some server. So we are having some server. And suppose we are having page 1 and we are having page 2. Now here imagine these same are like component 1 and component 2. Now what happens is client requests is for a page 1. Then what server will do is server will allocate memory for page 1. It will allocate memory for page 1 and it will load the page 1 into the memory. Now, once you are navigating from page 1 to page 2, the memory allocated for page 1 is deleted, cleaned up. And the new memory is allocated. The new memory is allocated for page 2. That means page 2 will load in the new memory. Now page 2 is not aware of what happened in page 1. And whatever values and results you got in page 1, they are not accessible to page 2. Gone. That is the reason web developers need to implement state management techniques. Every web application needs state management techniques. Why you need state management techniques? Because HTTP is stateless. If you want to carry data from one page to another, if you want to carry data from one request to another, then you need state management. Being a stateless nature is very good for server because it manages the memory very well. But it is difficult for the users. For example, you open Gmail. In the first screen, it asks, please enter your ID and password. You entered ID password, successfully logged in. After you log in, you selected your first mail. You got some mail, you selected first mail. It will again ask login. You may think like just now I provided my ID and password. That is only for that page. Another page again login. Another page again login. Now imagine for every page you have to log in. That is the nature of stateless. Then how you manage this? That means what is the stateless nature? So stateless nature of HTTP is good for server as it manages the memory with less overload. And as it manages memory with less overload. So it is not good to handle data across requests as server cannot remember the data across requests. Server cannot remember the data across requests. So hence, web applications require various state management techniques. Web applications require various state management techniques to store the data and to manage the data across requests. And actually, state management is classified into two types. You have client-side state management and you have server-side. We have server-side state. You can manage client-side, server-side. State management is classified into two types. We have client-side, server-side. What is the point about client-side, server-side is nothing but where server will store your information. That means, for example, you want server to remember your information. You want server to remember your information between requests. You entered user ID password. You want server to remember your user ID password until you sign out. If it doesn't remember until you sign out, then every time it will ask user ID password. Every page you have to log in. That means now the concept here is, what is the point? So the concept here is where it will store your data. Server can store your data and use that data from two places. One, server can use its memory. Server can use server memory. In server memory, it can keep your data and remind you about it. Or server can keep your data in your computer only. Server don't take the burden. Server will not take the burden. What server will do? Server says that I will store your information in your computer only. Whenever you need, it will be provided from your PC. These are client-side state management techniques. For example, which client-side state management techniques everybody uses when they log in? When they log in, the user ID, password, these all credentials are provided and they are stored. Do you know they are stored in cookies? So cookies, where cookies are saved? Cookies are saved in the browser. In the not only browser, they are stored in the computer hard drive of client. In the computer hard drive of client, you can store. In the client browser memory, you can store. That means we are using client memory to store the data. Then we call these techniques as what? Client-side state management techniques. In JavaScript, you learn. What are client-side management techniques you learned in JavaScript? JavaScript client-side state management techniques. Later, you will learn about them. If you haven't learned, we will discuss that. One is what? So we have client-side state management techniques means we have query string, we have cookies, we have local storage, we have session storage. Local storage, session storage, cookies, query string, this all comes under client-side state management. So in browser, you have them, right? So when you go to inspect, let's go to the application category. These are client-side storages. You have a local storage, you have a session storage, you have a cookie storage. That means data is stored in the client device and it is accessed from the client device. These are storages, different types of storages. So React is using which state management? Client side. It uses client side state management techniques. Server side means JSP, PHP, ASP, and other server side technologies they maintain. Means what they do is they store the data on server. And whenever user wants, they will provide data from the server. So those are server side. Later, when you learn any server side technologies, you will understand those techniques. So depending on where you store the data, whether it is client side or server side. So React uses various client side state management techniques. React uses various client side state management techniques like what? Query string. It can use local storage. It can use session storage. It can use cookies. All these it can use. Not only that, React also provides state. React also provides state for virtual DOM. It provides state for virtual DOM because React is not using actual DOM. Query string, local storage, session storage, cookies, this all belongs to what? This all belongs to actual DOM. They are not related to virtual DOM. They are all related to actual DOM. So query string is related to actual DOM. Local storage is related to actual DOM. These are all actual DOM. Then React provides some state techniques through virtual DOM. Virtual DOM state management is there. Actually, for that, what React uses is React provides various hooks. It provides various hooks. Hooks are actually like functions. We call them hooks. So React hooks, later you will learn about them detailedly. React provides various hooks to manage state for a component. Manage state for a component. What are the hooks available? We have use state. So we have like use context. We have like use ref. So we have like use memo. Later you will learn all these options. We have like use callback. So we have like use reducer. This all you are going to learn how to handle them. These are all different types of hooks to manage the data. So in React.js, so don't use variables for managing your data in a component. If you have to store some data, you want to access the data and use the data across requests, always you have to prefer using state. So why you have to prefer using state? Because state is mutable. State is mutable. That means it can change according to the situation. It can change the structure according to the situation. So state is mutable and components always need only mutable. So that means data is maintained in a state. Actually, there are different state techniques. Initially, we are going to use one state technique. Actually, the local state is defined by using use state. It is defined by using use state hook. The local state is defined by using use state hook. That means what it does, it will create a local state. And what is the nature of local state? Local state will be from component start to component end. Once the component ends, the state is gone. We will learn other techniques, how to transport data from one component to another. We have to use other techniques for that. Initially, use state is configuring a state for a component, but it is a local state. What is the nature of local state? You can store some data. The data can change its behavior. It can change the structure because it is mutable. But this data is not accessible to other component. You said that data is accessible across request using state, but this is a local state. Across multiple requests, the data will be there, but from one component to another, data cannot be transported. We cannot access this data from another component. It is only for the component. That means what is the nature of local state? It is created when component is loaded. It is destroyed when component is completed. Once you move from one component to another, that state is deleted. Then how to carry data? Other techniques are there. We will learn later about those techniques. So what is the nature of local state? So local state is configured while mounting the component. It is configured while creating the component actually. While creating the component. And destroyed when user navigates to another component. Local state is configured while creating the component and destroyed when user navigates to another component. So it will automatically destroy. So the data that is stored in this state is not accessible to other components, but it is accessible to this component across multiple requests. In the same component you are dealing with so many times, it will be available. So how do we configure that? Generally, what we have to do syntactically, we have to import use state from, you have to import this use state from React. React core library will provide this use state. You have to import use state from React. And actually, this use state provides a destructuring technique. You know, in JavaScript, you learned destructuring declaration, right? JavaScript, you people know destructuring. Na? What is destructuring in JavaScript? Destructuring technique. That means, so I am having X and Y. These are two variables. X and Y are two variables. And this is 10. So what is the result of X and Y now? It is invalid. It is invalid. Why? Because X and Y is a sequence of variables. Because you written in a meta character, square brace. That means sequence of variables. A sequence of variable needs a sequence of data also. Sequence of variable needs sequence of data. That means it needs an iterable. Iterable means sequentially accessing the data from a collection. It needs an iterable. Now, when you try to run this document.write, suppose x equal to plus x and in the next line y is equal to plus y. I am printing just x and y. Usually what it is going to do, it is going to show me one error. What is that error? It is about iterable. It is saying that 10 is not iterable. It is not iterable. So how you make it iterable? Then you can put in a square brace. Then it is iterable. Now, what is this? This is destructuring technique. Destructuring technique. It is a destructuring technique. That means I use a 10. Then what is the value of x? X value is 10. Y is undefined. Y is undefined. That means there is no value in y. So x is 10, y is undefined. And you pass two values into this. That means x is 10 and y is 20. This is the destructuring actually. For example, what we done here is I defined var values is equal to suppose 10 comma 20. And what I have done here is I am passing the values into this. Now what is the value of x and y? The value of x and y is nothing but actually the value of x is 1020 and y is how much? Undefined. Y is undefined, x is 1020. And you learned in JavaScript, we spread by using spread operator. By using spread operator, we are going to spread this and it will work. These are all basics of JavaScript. In JavaScript, you learned destructuring, you learned about how to spread the values into the destructuring techniques. This is all basic of very JavaScript. JavaScript variable concept this is. That means now why you need to know this? Because this state uses a destructuring technique. It uses a destructuring technique. That means we have a constant. It have one is getter, another we have a setter, and it is use state. Use state returns. Use state actually it is an iterable. Use state is a iterable which returns two members. What are those two members? One getter, another one setter. Order dependency is there. First one is getter, second one is setter. What is the role of getter and setter? Getter is to read the value and setter is to assign the value. You can assign values using a setter. You can read the values by using a getter. So this is the basic syntax. How do you configure the state? So state allocates memory. Allocates memory. And how you can handle that memory? By using accessors. State provides two accessors, one getter and setter, right? So generally, what is this meaning of this syntax is use state will allocate memory for component, will allocate memory for component, which is controlled by accessors, One is getter, to read value from memory. Another one is setter, to assign value into memory. Here the memory is to read value from state and to assign value into the state. to read value from the state and to assign value into the state. So a local state is required in a React component to handle the data. If you want to store some data, you want to deal with some data in a component, don't use variables. Always you have to use what? State. Through state, you allocate memory, store the data in that. Now there are so many interview questions here. The frequently asked questions here. One of the popular interview question, even at very experienced level also. The question is, why React developers prefer using a constant for state? Why not var and let? Can you define state by using var and let? It is recommended to use const. We can declare by using var let. A state can be configured by using var and let. But what is problem with var and let? The problem with var and let is they will allow you to declare and later initialize, later assign. But state must be initialized. State must be initialized. That means the nature of state is always state must be initialized. And the rule about state is make sure that the state is initialized. Means memory is initialized when you start. You think that later I will assign memory to the component, that leads to a lot of attacks, injection attacks, security issues. That means if you try to assign memory to a component after the component is created, that is dangerous. That is not good for application security. That is the reason React developers always prefer using a const to define state. You can define using var let also, it will work, but it will lead to lot of security issues. That's the reason it is always recommended to use a const, because state must be initialized. State must be initialized. So here so many interrelated questions are there. You will understand. First question is, why developers prefer using const for declaring, for configuring state, use state? Why developers prefer using const for configuring use state? So state must be initialized. State must be initialized. State must be initialized. State must be initialized for a component. State must be initialized for a component. So which is secured and safe for memory, which is secured and safe for memory. LET and var, LET and var. LET and var allows assignment, which is not good for state, which is not good for state. That is the reason it is always recommended to configure the state by using what? By using const. Now, one more interesting question they ask, like, if you configure state using const, how you will assign? How you will assign a new value? Obviously, this doubt will come. Now, they will ask you, okay, you are an experienced person, then tell me how setter will work in a constant. How setter will work in a constant. So you are saying that const is So const is what? Is only for initializing. You cannot assign. You know, JavaScript will not allow constant to assign. Then how you will assign a new value? How setter will work? So that means now here the point is how setter is going to work. That means the question asked to you is, can a constant change its value? Yes, a constant can change its value. A constant can change its value. It can change the value. That means how a constant can change the value. So for example, a constant can change the value. For example, you see, that is the reason many people say constant is read only. Then we will ask, then what is read only? If constant is read only, then what is read only? You are saying that read only and const both are same. Because in programming languages, we have a read only accessor also. Then what is difference between a constant read only? Constant read only both are not same. Constant can change the value. How constant changes the value? For example, I say constant x equal to prompt. I'm using enter number. Now what we are doing, document.write x equal to the value of x. Now what is the concept here? So the concept is nothing but I opened, it is asking enter number. Enter number, I entered 20. Now can I change this number 20 to 30? You can change this to 20 to 30, it is changing. Constant is changing the value. But when it changes the value, again when it will initialize the memory. That means whenever you want to assign a new value, that means you reinitialize the memory. When you reinitialize the memory, at the time of reinitializing, you can pass a new value. At the time of reinitializing, you can pass a new value. That means state will not allow to assign, but state will allow to reinitialize. Whenever you want to use the state, you have to reinitialize the state. After initializing, you store some data in it. You want to modify it, then you reinitialize the state. Is it possible to change the state? Yes, but you have to reinitialize. That is the reason generally what happens, I will show here. That means if you configure state using constant, how you can assign the value. So const will not allow assignment. That is very important. Const will not allow assignment, but allows changing the value in memory by reinitializing. By reinitializing the memory. So setter reinitialize the memory. Setter reinitializes the memory and stores a new value into state. Setter reinitializes the memory and stores a new value into state. That is the reason here important is, for example, var name and set name. We have two options. Is equal to what? Use state. So set name is equal to some new name. So you write like this. This is actually invalid. Why it is invalid? Why it is invalid? Because you are trying to assign a value into the state. Assignment of value into the state is not valid. You are trying to assign. Then what we will do is we will set name and we allocate the memory and with new name. That means now what is this? This is valid. Now in the second case, what is happening? It is not assigning. It is reinitializing the memory. It is reinitializing the memory. That means what is this parenthesis means? This parenthesis is anonymous function. That is an anonymous function. You know anonymous functions in JavaScript, right? JavaScript anonymous function. This anonymous function will allocate a memory again for that particular state. Allocate memory. What is this? Use state. Use state is actually a function. And what this refers to, function allocates memory. It is allocating memory. That means you are allocating memory for the function. This is allocating memory. That is allocating memory. While allocating memory into the memory, you can pass a new value. You can pass a new value. You cannot assign, but you can pass a new value like this. That means how do we set state? Always we set state in this way. We don't do that by using this assignment technique. We always do by using this technique. This is not assigning. This is what? Reinitialize. This is not assignment. This is reinitializing. That is reinitializing. So these are very important actually. These points are very simple but very complex. In interviews at very experienced level also these questions are asked. Why you are using const? So because generally we can do var let also. Then why you are using const? Because that is the nature of const. That means why const? Because according to the rules, state must be initialized while component is created. Then that is possible only when you use a const. Because when you use let and var, they skip initialization. They can skip initialization. They can skip initialization, but const cannot skip initialization. Mandatorily, you must initialize. You know that constant will not allow declaration. It allows only initialization. You can't skip initialization. Then immediately question will come. If it is const, then how I will assign a new value? Because constants will not allow to assign. We don't assign actually. We reinitialize. We reinitialize the value. That is the nature of this. So how to handle the data? See now. Don't use variables. Yesterday I have showed you with some variables. Don't use the variables. What you have to do in a component, first you have to import. What you have to import? Use state. From the React core library you have to import. And we need to constant. Here we need a getter. Getter is price and setter is some set price. And is equal to what? Use state. And if you want, you can initialize a value directly into this. If you want, you can initialize the value into this. Later, if you want, then you have to use this setter. Directly, you can initialize a value, which you can use it. That means here I can say price. And what is the price? It is coming from price. And directly this. And what is this price? Already it is dollar. So here we are defining price, and what it is, we are accessing the price. This is nothing but it is accessing the price that you have stored in the state, and it is displaying it. Actually, we are displaying the price here. That is how we have to manage the data. How to set price, I will tell you later. Why? Because currently, if I try here set price, and we are trying to set a new value into this. This is the new value you are setting into this. That means you see it shows an error. Why it shows an error? Because here some more rules are there. You cannot set the state at the time of creating the component. Actually, this is creating component. While creating component, you can initialize the state. You cannot set the state. Then when to set the state? After component created, it loads the component. While loading, you can assign the values. That means currently component is creating. This is the creating phase. That means whatever you write in a function, that is function definition. You learned, na? That means in JavaScript you learned. What you learned? So we have a function. So the function name, and we have what? Params. And what you learned about function. So this is called as, we generally call this as what? Declaration. declaration. And this is called as, we call this as what? Signature. Signature. And what this is called as? This is called as definition. Every function have a declaration, signature, and definition. How you access a function from any place and use it? By using the function signature. By using the function signature. Function signature tells what is the function name and what parameters it accepts. Right? That is the function signature. Every function have a declaration, signature, and definition. And actually, while creating the function, this all will happen. While creating the function, that means while creating the function, this all will happen. That means whatever you write inside this function definition, these all are done while creating. That means while creating, you cannot set a state. This is not possible. After creating, you can set a state. After creating, you can set a state. So that means here another key point. So when to set state? When to set state? So state cannot set values. Set values while creating a component. State cannot set values while creating a component. State cannot set values while creating a component. So you have to configure values into state after component is created. After component is created, which can be mount, or any event. So, or any element event, which can be mount or any element event. So mount here means mounting is nothing but it is just like loading. That means you have a body load in JavaScript. Body load, onload. You have an onload now. Onload. So onload indicates what actions to perform while loading. Onload is an event. What actions to perform on loading? While loading, what actions to perform? Those we define by using onload. And here that is defined as a mount phase. Mount indicates at the time of loading the component. Component is ready. It is created. After creating, the component will load. That means we call it as what? Mount. While mounting, you can assign a state. Or after mounting, some events. Events like button clicked, drop down changed, or any another event. On any particular event, you can assign. So setting state cannot be done while creating the component. After creating the component, while mounting the component, you can do, or you can define after mounting on particular events. We can do that. Now the question is how to define the mount phase. That means how to configure the mount phase. How to define a mount phase. How to define a mount phase for component in React. How to define a mount phase for component in React. So by using use effect hook, we have a hook called use effect. These are two very regularly used hooks. One is use state, another one is use effect. Use effect indicates what actions to perform at the time of loading the component. So state is created and it is initialized at the time of creating component. While creating, you cannot assign state. After component is created, the memory is allocated. Now at the time of loading, you can do it. Or without that, any particular event, you can do it. Events, I will tell you later how to handle them. But how to write the load actually. So use effect defines the mount phase. Actually, use effect uses both mount and unmount phase. Later, you will learn more details about them. Syntactically, we write use effect like this. Use effect uses actually, it uses a callback function. Use effect uses a callback function and it uses dependencies. It uses dependencies. It uses dependencies. Majority you learned already. What is that syntax? You know, that is an arrow technique na? In JavaScript. In a shorthand way, how you write the functions by using arrow. So in React, we don't use any function. So we always majority follow arrow. In JSX, anywhere when you are writing, we always follow the arrow techniques. And in JavaScript function arrow techniques, you already learned how to write the functions. This is an arrow method of writing a callback function. That means this is a function and that function has some definition. Function has some definition. That means whatever activities to perform, you have to define inside this use effect. Actually, I written like this means I will tell you the traditional way. What is it? Use effect uses what? Function. It uses a function and it uses dependencies. What is the dependencies? I will tell you. We don't write like this. We always write in a shorthand way. So what is difference? What is the point about dependency? That means you cannot set price here. Then what we have to do? Use effect. Use effect is also a member of React. You have to import that. And use effect uses a callback. And this callback function after the dependencies. And here you can set the value. So how you can set the value? What we have to do? What? Set price. Set price, you pass a new value into this. You pass a new value into this and you can see that it is going to do that. You can set a new value into that. Already it is initialized with some value and you are passing some new value into that. At the time of mounting, you can do. Suppose I am trying to write like this, set price is equal to some value. Is it possible to assign a value into constant? It is not possible. Assignment to constant is not possible. Now, if I change from const to var, is it possible? So it is possible, but this is not recommended. It will work, but it is not recommended. Why we don't recommend? This leads to a lot of attacks, leads to a lot of security problems. That's not recommended. That is the reason you will never see React developers using var or LET for state. You can use, as I already told you, right? But it is not recommended. It is not recommended. It is always recommended to define what? Const. Because const will ensure that the state is initialized when a component starts. Because var and LET will not ensure state is initialized or not. That problem will come. That's the reason we don't do that. So here, now what we have to do, you cannot assign. Then what you have to do? We have to allocate the memory. How you allocate the memory? By using the setter. That means we will initialize the memory. Into the memory, we will pass the new value. Now the question is, what is this dependency means? Why I have to use this dependency? Dependency is nothing but, you learned generally about constructor in a class. When you learned OOP in general JavaScript, every class have a constructor and every class have methods. How many times you can call a method in a class through an object? Through an object, how many times you can call a method of class? Any number of times you can call. How many times constructor is called? Only one time constructor is called. Mount also same. Every component can mount only once. Then problem is there. If it mount only once, first time while mounting, what is the data it will keep? Later, if any changes are happening, those changes will not update because the mount happens only once. Then what is this dependency? This dependency, this is an array. Array. This is an array. This indicates when to mount again. That dependency tells when I should mount again. You tell me the dependency, I will mount again. Otherwise, I will mount only once. That means you tell that when name is changed, mount again. When ID is changed, mount again. Some parameter changed, mount again. That means you have to update your component at certain stages. Then tell me that when to mount, because unnecessarily mounting every time will be a burden for a component. Then the component says that I will not mount every time. I will mount only when any change occurred. And what change occurred, you tell me. According to that, I will mount again. That is what dependency is. Dependency indicates that when it should mount again. When it should mount again. Remember, if there are no dependencies also, you have to declare dependencies. That means you cannot define use effect like this. That is not good. Then immediately use effect says that dependency is missing. Dependency is missing. Dependency is missing means it is unable to identify when it should mount again. Even there are no dependencies, you have to mention about dependencies. That means you put an empty saying that, now what does it mean that there are no dependencies? If there are dependencies, then you mention them. ID is a dependency, price is a dependency, name is dependent. You can add multiple dependencies. That means whenever ID changes, it will update. It will load again. Whenever price changes, it will load again. This situation comes later, not now. That means as of now, we don't use these dependencies. Later you will do. Because for that, we need to understand dependencies, changing the data, updating the data. We should learn that. Event binding and all we will see. So initially, you have one more important thing to understand. So what is that? So note, what is the note? Use effect can handle two phases. So one phase is mount, another phase is unmount. It can handle two phases. One is mount and another unmount. Mounting is nothing but actions to perform at the time of loading. Unmount is at the time of unloading. So unmount, later you will see how to handle that. Initially mount. Next, what is the point about the use effect you should know is, so every component mounts only once. You have to define the dependency to mount again. You have to define the dependency to mount again. You have to define the dependency to mount again. So you can configure multiple dependencies. You can configure multiple dependencies for a component. These dependencies we will see later, but it is important to use the dependencies. Even there are no dependencies, you have to mention about dependencies. Unmount, how to do, we will see later. How we write the unmount phase, we will see later. Unmount means while destroying. So while loading and while unloading, actions we can define on unloading. So this is use effect is very important. This is very important. So at the time of mounting, you can set some option. And as of now, here we are presenting the data, and you know all the techniques of presenting the data. Yesterday I told you Boolean. Now what kind of data we can store in a state? Anything. It can be primitive type, it can be non-primitive. It can be number, string, Boolean, undefined, any type. And it can be array, object, map, any kind of data you can store. There is no limit for that. We will see all types of data. Already yesterday we discussed two types of data. What is that? One is number, another one is a Boolean. We understood the difference between them, right? So I will just give one example here. This is data binding .jsx. I will copy this code just to make you understand how to define the state and how to use effect. So you learn two very major concepts of React that we regularly use in React component. One is how to configure the state and what are the rules about it. And how do we configure a mounting phase? Because you cannot set a state without mounting. Later after mounting, we can define. So, but initially how to define the mount and what are the dependencies about the mount? These are important. Actually, you see, I inspect here and let's open this console. In the console, you see, I am not having any problem if I don't define the dependency. You see, I remove the dependencies. I am not defining the dependencies. If I don't define the dependencies and I refresh, there is no problem. There is no issue, but later problem will come. That means later when you try to control this component through other data, then it says that I can't find any dependencies. Because when you will update, you don't have any dependencies. So this is not going to update at all. It is not going to update at all. And that is not a good nature of a component. A component should be in such a way that what is the purpose of component? Reusability. How you will reuse without changing the content. That means for that dependencies play the key role. So it is very important to mention about what? Dependence. Even you don't define the dependency, no problem. There is no issue in that. But these are all bad coding. You know already, good code, bad code. Bad coding indicates that this may work, but it will lead to later a lot of bugs. That situation will come later. You will see that practically. When you understand while working with the dependency, you will see the issue. Error will come saying that dependency not configured for mount. So this is one basic thing how to handle. I hope you are clear. That means now in React components, don't use variables for storing the data, which I showed you yesterday basically. Now you need to use state. Through the state, you configure the data and you manage the data. Next important, once you know this, yesterday we learned about two data types. One is number, another one is Boolean. So now another we will see, so string type. Binding string. So how you bind the string, how do we deal with the string? So you already know, so ES5 and higher versions support string with three options. What is it? Single quote and a double quote and what? Backtick. String can be defined with these three. Single quote, double quote and a backtick. This is a single quote string. This is a single quote and this is a double quote and this is an backtick. You already know in JavaScript ES5 and higher versions, it supports these three. And you know the reason also. You know, backtick allows a string with embedded expression. Embedded expression. Allows a string with embedded expression. And how to write data binding expression? Data binding embedded expression is defined by using, you know that how you define dollar curly brace, right? That is block. And data binding expression in JavaScript is not allowed in single quote and double quote. Data binding expression is allowed in only backtick. Only backtick allows the binding expression. Single quote and double quote will not allow binding expression. That you already know about your string JavaScript. So these string basics are same, but only one simple point I need to explain is that how you bind it. Just only part, because I'm not explaining any JavaScript string things. That's a very big concept you already learned while learning JavaScript, right? So usually what is the concept here is when you are dealing with the data, binding with the data, suppose it is a string. Here I will define some as some product name and set product name. Just I am defining like this. So, and we are defining some product name. So that is initialized with some value. So, or we just keep it empty and later we send some value into that by using set product name. Some value we are defining. And we are trying to display the product name here. So we have a data list and a data term name and data definition. Here I will just put a class container. So container fluid, because we are using Bootstrap, and here we want to display the name, then we will put a binding expression and we will put what? Product name. And it is going to access the name and display the name here. So we are configuring a string, we are storing the data, and we are displaying the data. This is a general string. Now you know string is defined with single quote, double quote, and backtick. When to use single quote, double quote is you can switch between inner and outer strings. Single and double quote are to switch between inner outer. But single double quote will not allow any binding expression. Binding expressions are defined by using only backtick. That means usually first in your JavaScript, suppose where name is equal to suppose John and where age is equal to 22. Now document.write, I am writing here, so hello and the name. Then we need a lot of data concatenation because I am using double quote. When I am using double quote or single quote, a lot of concatenation is required. That means what we have to do, plus name. After that, again plus, and we define some your age. Your age is again plus, and we define what? Age. But in modern JavaScript, we don't do this. Huh? In modern JavaScript, we never write like this. What we do? Document.write. We will put a backtick. And in the backtick, we say hello, hello, and put a binding expression. In that, we can access the name. And your age is again a binding expression, age. This is how we write in modern JavaScript. That is general JavaScript, right? This is what JavaScript string is. And this binding expression is not allowed in single quote and double quote. It is allowed only in the backtick. Suppose I run this, you can see it is allowed same output. But here we use lot of concatenation, which is not required. Now we can simply do this, and this is not allowed in single quote or double quote. In single quote or double quote, if you are writing a string, then the binding expression is not allowed. The binding expression is allowed only in backticks. So in modern JavaScript, majority of concatenations we avoid. We never use plus, 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 plus. That's all nonsense these days, right? These are all silly old JavaScript techniques. So we don't use these anymore. We just bind by using the backtick, modern data binding technique. So here, why you need that? Because for example, see, I want to apply some class. That means I want to apply some CSS classes, right? So see what we are doing here. We are applying a constant, and I will give as suppose BG style, some background style, set BG style, and is equal to what? Use state. And here I will initialize some value. That means BG style, I defined some value. Temporarily, it is having some value to define. Now later we will assign some value. It is empty actually. It is expecting a string. Just we initialize a string. Okay, now here for this heading we are adding. So for this heading we are adding a class. And already what is the class we are having is, in the class we are defining like suppose text center. This is a class. And so text danger, that is the class. Already these two classes are applied. Now I want to apply one more class, but that is dynamically we will control. Dynamically means what? One time one color, another time another color, we will be keep on changing. That means now what we will do is here, we need to add this BG style to these classes. That BG style later we will decide. But BG style also must be added along with these classes. That means these are already two classes. To these two classes, how you will add another class dynamically. Then how you write this? Then usually what we do is, if you want such dynamic, then we will remove this. We will put a binding expression because we need some dynamic data. In that already what is the string? Already what is the string? Text center, another one is text danger. This is the string. So already it is working same. To this additionally plus what we need to add? BG style. This BG style is dynamically decided later. Currently we don't have any BG style. I will later assign that set BG style. What I will do, I will put BG as warning. Then what it will do is, it is going to apply this class to this one. That means already there are two classes. It will add this also to that. That means it is going to add and display that here. And you see here, what is it? This is the class style. Now you see the problem here. What is the option we are applying? So BG warning. So now observe carefully in the inspect. In the console, you can see here there is no problem. There is no error. So this BG warning is actually used to set the background warning. Background warning. Background warning, we are adding that style additionally. This is class name. Actually, if I remove this, statically how you can access? Statically how you define any class? Just we have to use what? BG warning. BG warning is the option and it will get this. That means now I need to bring it dynamically and append to this. How you will add the new dynamic value into this? How you will add new dynamic value into this? That means you need to put a space here. There are issues with spaces also. And I need to put a binding expression, means plus. What is that? Another one is what? BG style. BG style is using what? BG warning. BG warning is a string. It is working. But if I miss this space, if I miss that space, then it is not going to apply. Why? Because you are concatenating. This text is concatenated immediately after. That means it becomes a part of this lengthy text. But you need a space. You miss these small points, it will not work. That risk we don't want. Then generally what we do, we don't write like this. We don't write like this. Then how do we define? How do we define? What are the classes? You use a backtick. In the backtick, what you do? What is it? Text center. Okay, text center is working. So you use what? Text danger. Text danger is working. And you apply dollar curly brace. That is the JavaScript binding expression to bind a dynamic value into string. JavaScript binding expression. And into this, now we apply what? BG style. Then it is going to apply. This is the way how you bind the new. You will not use plus, 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 plus. Those days gone. Those days of JavaScript gone. Even in modern programming also, so we don't use much double quotes, single quotes for concatenation, because several programming languages have a solution for this. They introduced this backtick with binding expression. Different languages have. Angular is having, .NET is having, so PHP, Python, all these have, the Java, all these are introducing these new binding techniques which are required. We are eliminating all the concatenation techniques. So all modern technologies and languages have this binding expressions. You will find this everywhere. Now in interviews, if React people ask you, what is difference between this and this? First one is React binding expression. Second one is JavaScript binding expression. JavaScript binding expression can be used only in a string with backticks. React binding expression can be used anywhere in JSX. In JSX, anywhere you can bind a dynamic value by using what? Curly brace. That is actually, this one is what? React binding expression, and this one is what? JavaScript binding expression. JavaScript binding expression is allowed only in a string with backtick. In a string with backtick, that is important. Actually, that is the concept here. So syntactically here you are configuring a string. Backtick means you have a string, and dollar we have expression, and complete your string. That's how we define backtick, through backtick. So the question, what is difference between this binding expression? Another one is dollar curly brace. So here we have, this one is React binding expression for JSX. And this is JavaScript binding expression for string with backtick. For string with backtick. So that is important. So, and see, I'm not explaining JavaScript string basics here. I'm just giving you highlights. I'm giving just a fast overview of what is your JavaScript string and how we do this in React. That's the point I'm explaining. So, and important, I will give this example, data binding dot JSX. I will copy this example. Here we are using one string normally, and we are using another string with a binding expression. That means one string is username, product name. Another one is some class. And this class we are not directly using. We are binding with existing class. We can do that with concatenation technique also, but this is good, recommended everywhere, right? So next important point, you know already that. So all JavaScript string functions. So all JavaScript string methods are same to use in React, So that means you have string formatting method and we have string manipulation. String formatting methods, string manipulation methods, whatever you learned in JavaScript, they are same. There is no change. I'm not giving any of those methods here because those all people learn in JavaScript itself. What are string formatting methods? String formatting methods include like bold, like what? Italics. So like what? Font size. So like font color. So like what? To uppercase. So like what? To lowercase. These are all so many string formatting methods. And string manipulation means, yeah, string manipulation. So many are there. Huh? What you learned in string manipulation. So length to get the number of characters. Properties, string manipulation properties. We have options like what? Index of what is it? Last index of we have char at. So we have char code at, we have like match. So we have like what? Slice. We have like substring. We have like sub str, right? So you have so many string related manipulation methods. These all are same as it is we use here. There is no change. So we are not learning any JavaScript string handling here. So what is new to deal with here, I explained. Rest of all concepts will be same. We will implement them in different examples later. We will work with them and we will handle with these later. So string manipulation, so string handling is same. And of course, how to handle them. So you know what is char at, what is char code at, what is match. Match is for what? Match is for matching your value with a regular expression. And usually you know how to write regular expression. In JavaScript, regular expression is enclosed in slash, 2 slashes, right? So I will just give one point here. That means just to make you understand about that. Actually, suppose we are configuring, I remove all this, yeah. Suppose we are configuring, so constant password and set password. Set password is equal to use state. We are defining use state. It is just a string. And what we are having is constant. So we need to verify. That means, you know, just we can directly verify in the pattern itself. So what we will do is set password. Set password is some admin 123, something like this we are giving. So that is password. And what we are doing here is we are verifying. That means I just give a binding expression here. What is that? Password dot match. Password is matching with regular expression. What is our regular expression? That means this is a ternary operator. Ternary operator. So you know question mark colon. How do you write, right? What is the condition? If password is matching with regular expression is written in 2 slash. I'm writing some regular expression, question mark equal dot star square a hyphen z slash w. So 4 comma 10. You know in JavaScript what this regular expression means? That means 4 to 10 characters, at least one uppercase letter. That is the password requirement. 4 to 10 characters alphanumeric with at least one uppercase letter. If this condition is matching, because match will return a boolean true or false. If it is matching, we say verified. If it is not matching, so password requires at least one uppercase letter. This warning we are defining. Then usually it is going to display the output like this. Password requires at least one uppercase letter. Because the password that I entered here is not having an uppercase letter. Okay, one uppercase letter I will add into my password. Then it should show me that verified. That means how you handle your string functions. This is how we handle all the string functions. Managing string, all string methods you can implement here as this. You are having some title. Suppose you are having a constant title. And see, you don't need a setter. You can directly use state and you can define some title. That means welcome to React. Like this, I'm just giving something like this. That means our intention is we will not set later anywhere. We will just initialize and use it everywhere. In that case, you don't need a setter. And you know that in programming languages, if setter is not defined, then it is treated as read only. If setter is not there, then it is treated as what? Read only. You can just only read. That means I want to present that here. In a heading, I want to present. Then in a heading, I am using what it is? Title. And the title I want to display there. So what is that? Some match is having problem. This is having some conflict with this one. Okay, I will just remove this part. And you see now, what we need to do is we need to change this. We need to change this to capital letter. Then you know that. What is it? To uppercase. You can add the method. You can use the methods like what? Slice. Slice. So from 0 to how many characters? 10 characters it is going to do. All your string functions will work as it is. Just I need to just give you an overview that all these will work as it is. Right? So an example is not required for that. Just later we will use in various occasions. Even regular expression, everything we will use. So in the data types, now what are the types you have learned? 3. One is number, another one Boolean, another one string. We have other data types to handle that we will see in next session. Right? Tomorrow we will discuss about other data types, primitive and non-primitive. Non-primitive are complicated now. That means arrays, objects, how to deal them in React. That we will see in the next session. Tomorrow we'll continue. Okay, right.